So we talked a bit about, I talked to Mel Gainsford in the last episode of the podcast about her, when she was an Olympic athlete. It was her first Olympics, and then her first Commonwealth Games. It wasn't until after those events that she actually got to a stage where she was paid to be an elite athlete. And obviously the opportunities for women are very different for males, although it's improving. I guess the opportunities for women, females versus males is very different. And you talked about how, as you're going through the Ironman series in the last decade, you're picking up points along the way, and you're a strong contender, but you never really got to that, to winning until, in the last few years. And you've talked about how you've had thoughts at stages about, devoting more time to your career prospects, whether it be, working in your media company with your brother, which we'll talk about, your app development, potentially going into carpentry, but obviously bringing a child into the world. How has that impacted you growing up? Have you been on, a lot of money with your Ironman competing, or is it mainly through endorsements and commercial opportunities and sponsorships that you've kind of made a living through this?
Yeah, it's a good question. Because a lot of people, look back to the glory days of Uncle Toby's and those kind of days and saw how much money there was. Those times have changed significantly. There's not a lot of money as such in this sport. I think at a top level, there's probably maybe 4 guys or 5 guys and girls that can make somewhat a living out of it. Most of it comes through endorsements, somewhat prize money as well. But also, like, from a young age, man, I always was told that it's not about what someone can pay you, but it's always about what you can bring to the table as well. And for me, I've always tried to view it through that lens as to how can I add value to this brand. If I can't, that's fine. It's not the right partner for me. So I'm really big on that now, and it's the same in, I guess, my media business now too. Is that if we can't add value to a client, I'm happy to not take that work. I need to be interested and love that product, love what they're doing, and be interested in it to add value to it. But also, what our sports taught me is that it's taught me to work really, really, really hard for not an awful lot. So I can take that work ethic now and apply that to something which will pay me better than, what this has in the past. And I think that's a real positive.
Yeah, and I guess in the early days, investing so much time in your training, and not being able to put those hours into, like work, or there's not that same financial incentive. Obviously your friends around you might have been finishing up with their university degrees and heading into the workforce. Was there a moment there where you thought about, retiring and then getting stuck into your trade, or working on your own businesses?
Yeah. So going back to the trade stuff, when I finished that, there were aspects that I really liked, and there were aspects that, I wasn't so interested in. I loved being hands-on and the manual labor of it, and feeling like I've worked a hard day. But I guess the one thing that I really did love about it was, and I saw myself being somewhat of a builder and constructing a real high performance team, whether it be in the building industry or any other industry. I like the thought of building high performing teams. And I think that's why I've always loved being part of an Australian team or certain teams in my sport. So, finishing that trade, I was like, I want to be able to build my own team of something I'm interested in. And it just gravitated towards that media space.
So tell us a little bit more about Lewis Media. So I understand that you're working with your brother on this project, and I think it's quite a unique thing. You've discussed this, how it's not about being a professional athlete. It's about the value you can add to your client as well. So working in media and partnering with a lot of the different sponsors or brands that you've worked with in a athlete, from an athlete point of view, how's that been, coming out of the sport of Ironman and, you know, then putting a different cap on and then having to work around, you know, marketing and what's that taught you about business and, you know, the way things are these days with social media too, how things are changing?
Yeah, the social media space is just a ever evolving space. You know, the changes that are occurring are just they're happening at such a fast pace. So if you're not on the ball, it is quite easy to fall behind. But in terms of my training, like it's and trying to take that cap off and put the other one on, I don't really view it like that. I do most of my kind of strategic thinking, whether it be for work, training, or whatever it is, whilst I'm training. It's really bizarre. Like, you know, I'll be kind of trying to somewhat problem solve or look for a new avenue to, I guess, you know, kind of unlock for certain clients when I'm actually doing my training. And then I finish training and it's sparked this idea and I jump straight on my laptop and start applying it. So it's, yeah, I kind of view it as just it's my life, right? It's not this or that. Which it's funny because I have other mates that are, you know, whether they're in that corporate or other kind of, they've got one full-time income, you know, they kind of view me as like, oh yeah, you live the dream, you barely work, you just train. But if I was to add up the hours I train and the hours that I spend working on clients, it probably works out to be anywhere from 60 to 80 hours a week, right? And being an athlete, it's not as simple as just, you know, turning up and going for a swim at the beach every day, as much as it might look like that from a social media perspective. It's, yeah, you know, yeah, I don't like the word sacrifices because I don't believe it is a sacrifice. It's a choice that I've made. It's a choice that I've made and a commitment, and I love doing that. You know, with Holly and Leo, it's like they've made the choice. You know, we've all made the choice to do it together. And as soon as Holly taps me on the shoulder and says, you know, you're not devoting enough time to us or the family or this or that, man, that's the time I'll take that cap off and it's done. But right now it's a really good balance. It helps me mentally, you know, stay mentally fit as well as physically fit and delivering on all fronts.